that y'all never made a run at all? Made a run at all in this one?
We're just not good enough. We don't obviously chemistry, talent wise, just everything. And it was clear, like I said, these last few games, they just, from the beginning of the game, they were just aggressive, veteran team, obviously, championship team, and, one of the best teams that we have in this league.
Coach, lay it out for us. What do we know about how this happened and how we got to this point?
First, guys, I am thrilled to be on this show. You guys know how much I love watching you guys.
Man.
But
You're the man,
listen, this is a massive deal all around.
Oh, I've been waiting to talk to this next guest right here. Our NBA analyst, champion with the Boston Celtics, the one and only Kendrick Perkins. Your reaction to this deal, do you feel it's a good thing for the Brooklyn Nets?
Stephen A., surprisingly, I don't. And here's why. Yes, you have all the offensive power in the world, but guess what? Defense win championships.
Done everything that I can. This situation is crazy. It's something that I don't think can be fixed. So, thanks.
All right, so let's get into this James Harden trade and, what it means for Brooklyn. We're not going to get too much into the other teams involved in this trade because I'm not doing like a whole breakdown or wrap up. I will talk a little bit about who went where and just give like maybe a quick thought. But I really wanted to speak on, the fact that this was something that was coming, and then a lot of the things that I'm seeing about, James Harden and the league and how, this is why the league is not as popular and it's down. And, a lot of people don't like it because of, players teaming up and, and all kind of essentially trying to win championships. And so the first thing I will say when it comes to these super teams and why they come about, obviously super teams have always existed. And see, this is the problem with short memory. Like a lot of people that are commenting on the game now and a lot of people that are reacting to the game now aren't necessarily students of the game, so they don't necessarily understand that super teams have been a thing since the beginning of the NBA. When you go back to the Celtics and the Lakers of the 50s with George Mikan and of course Bill Russell, Bob Cousy, all of these guys on the Celtics, and the Celtics were winning like 11 championships. And so it's like, to me, the frustration behind fans saying that they don't like the game because of players are teaming up. Clearly, those are not fans of the NBA because they would have understood that, super teams have always existed. Even your beloved Chicago Bulls was a super team. And so, we got to think about these things and how they affect the future and how players are, coming up under these systems, right? Because who labels a superstar? Who says that this person is, a superstar in the league? It's the media. The media tells you Steph Curry is a superstar. The media tells you LeBron James is a superstar. Now, granted, these are great players, obviously, generational players that have changed the game. And so these are no-brainers, right? But somebody like a Paul George, right? A very good player. Is he a superstar? It's up for debate. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't put it, he's a star. He's a good player. He's a good player that obviously has been in top 5 MVP discussions before, especially that first year in OKC, or I think it was the second year in OKC. He had a great season. And so when we're labeling these players, right, and we understand the situations in which they come from. Now, James Harden, for example, is from Arizona State. James Harden also went to Artesia High School, which is essentially right down the freeway from where I grew up. And so a lot of these players, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, DeMar DeRozan, LA area guys, Kawhi I had never heard of until San Diego State. And he played up at Riverside with a guy by the name of Tony Snell, who most people don't really know who he is anymore. but he's still in the league, obviously. But they went to King High School, Reggie Miller's old school, and this is where they essentially was able to put together some good high school teams and eventually get where we would call, of course, the NBA. And so I'm rambling here. But anyway, back to James Harden, right? So James went to Arizona State University, gets drafted number 3 in the same draft that produced Steph Curry, and of course the Ricky Rubio, Johnny Flynn debacle that happened, and of course New York with Steph falling out of their hands. But nobody expected James to be what he became. He was a nice player. Obviously, he was very heralded. He was a scoring machine at ASU, but it wasn't really like we saw MVP level, multiple scoring title guy, just a guy that literally just took off, what I'm saying, got better. And that's a credit to OKC and their developmental staff. And so this is where we're getting into, the development of players and how this happens. And it started off when we go back to talking about super teams and stuff like that. A lot of these people didn't come up in the AAU circuit. The 80s and the 90s, the AAU circuit did not exist. There was a few, camps here and there, but it wasn't like travel ball was this big, huge thing. And so now it is a huge thing. It is a huge thing to put together all-star teams and, the best from your state or whatever, or even players that are going, to other states to team up with other players to play. Because obviously in college, when you think about Duke and you think about North Carolina, and no one has a problem with these players teaming up to go to colleges. No one says, hey, John Calipari gets all the great players, and we know that all the incoming freshmen, for the most part, if they want to get to the league, they should go to Kentucky or they should play under John Calipari. We know that now. You know what I'm saying? And he's produced a lot of good players that are currently in the league now. That is from a system that is a derivative or a direct effect of the AAU basketball circuit. Guys teaming up, guys coming together and planning, hey, are you going to go here? I'm going to go here, right? So why the fuck do you think as adults they wouldn't do the same thing? Like their level of pride and their level of competition, it doesn't necessarily become the same thing, especially when you look at location, where guys are, essentially drafted versus where they would rather be. And for a while, of course, like Houston was a great destination, and James was there, and he embraced the city, and the city embraced him, and it was a good thing. So now him moving forward and moving on, because he clearly sees there's been changes in the front office. Daryl Morey's no longer there. Mike D'Antoni is no longer there. These were the guys that he saw the best success under. And so it's like waking up, and you go into work and every one of the employees that you've come to know and love and embrace and consider family, they're no longer there. And the system and the style and everything has changed. And so, from James' perspective, it's like, I would rather be somewhere where I feel comfortable and where I have played with certain guys. And a lot of these guys play on the Olympic team together. They play pickup ball in the summer. And so it's like when we look at, their mentality and their mindset in terms of staying true to a franchise that truly isn't going to stay true to them. Think about Houston and what they did to Akeem Olajuwon. It wasn't like Akeem wanted to get traded, but towards the tail end of his career, they shipped his ass off to Toronto. They was like, bro, we don't need you anymore. We're going young. After they that failed experiment with him, Pippen, and Barkley, they were ready to ship him out of there. And see, that's okay. We look at the organizations, and when they make moves, it's okay. It's cool for them to just ship these players out like they're pieces of property. But when the player is determining or deciding or has a say-so in where they want their career to go and the direction in which they want it to go in, we seem to have an issue with that. And so I really don't understand the logic behind being mad at James Harden for deciding that he wanted to go play in Brooklyn with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Now let's look at the basketball logistics of this, right? when you think about these three players, right? And Kyrie has now gotten more aggressive over the past few years. I mean, the guy has been shooting like 20 to 25 shots a game, in Boston and then eventually in Brooklyn before KD, started playing. And even then, he still got his shots off. Let's just be honest. And so Kyrie comes from the school of Mamba, Mamba mentality. He's aloof. He's he's out there, and people are starting to realize that. And you start to realize that when you think about the fact that, most of these kids are sheltered. You know what I'm saying? Like Kyrie was a sheltered kid. And when we talk about sheltered, you thinking about inside the home and all of that. No, he was sheltered inside of basketball. When you are playing basketball at that level that they play at, they spend most of their day in training rooms, in weight rooms, in gyms, in film rooms. Like, this is constantly their grind. So any outside noise or any outside media, and especially when you get really good, to the point where you're getting, the level of attention that these guys get, you're blocking out everything. You tend to not want to hear it. And what they're thinking about, right, is when they see Charles Barkley on TV every single night, right, and him and Chuck and Kenny are going at it, and they talk about the fact that Charles has no rings, they hear that and they see that. And so that bothers them when they think about the fact that Charles did later in his career go to chase rings. No matter what you want to say about it, he pushed his way out of Phoenix to get to Houston right after Houston had, essentially went back to back to try to get a ring in 96, 97. And so a lot of people, who love 90s basketball and love Michael Jordan for the fact that he was with the Bulls, and they don't even count his Wizard years. This is how fucked up NBA fandom has gotten, is that they don't even count Jordan's Wizard years because their feeling is, well, Jordan was loyal to one organization, and that organization was, mind you, also loyal to him in a certain aspect. They gave Jordan $30 million after he was only making $3 million previously to that. They gave him $30 million a year because he obviously threatened to leave in free agency. NBA wasn't covered like it's covered today. So we get on these players and we talk shit about how they are essentially spoiled brats and they don't, but you got to think about the ecosystem in which they've grew up in and evolved in. And I was telling someone a story about the fact that, I grew up playing against Tyson Chandler, when he was in high school. And Tyson was the tallest guy on the court. And it was so boring to him to play high school basketball because he was so much bigger and better than every single player on the floor that the guy started shooting threes, as a way for him to challenge himself. And I don't know how many threes he's taken in the league, but it's not as many as he took even in one game. These guys were literally savants. They were, they were playing against competition that wasn't very good. And so when you look at, level to level, and Tyson was one of those guys that jumped straight from high school. And so, you go from this level of playing with little kids to playing with grown men, you get humbled really fast and really quickly. And so all you're doing is looking for an opportunity to make it your time. And the faster that you can do that around players and guys that and you're familiar with, that gives you a better opportunity. Basketball is about chemistry. Basketball is about a belief that, hey, if I don't got it this night, my guy's going to pick me up